Chapter 18. 8 months later, Scarlett and Rhett's child was born. She was a girl, and she was named Eugenie Victoria, after the British Queen. Scarlett was relieved to see that she was an absolutely beautiful baby. She had Scarlett's black hair and large blue eyes like her father. What amazed Scarlett most, however, was Rhett's reaction to becoming a father. Scarlett had never seen a man act so ridiculous. Rhett talked about nothing else but his new daughter, how pretty she was, how sweet and quiet, and how she was the best baby in the world.
Just look at her,
Rhett said a week after the baby's birth.
Have you ever seen a more beautiful baby? You're going to be the most beautiful girl in Atlanta and have everything you want. And everyone is going to love you. And when it's time for you to get married, well, Daddy will find you the best husband in the world.
Scarlett said, Well, Rhett, doesn't her mother get any praise? She's my child, too, after all. You certainly are acting ridiculous.
Ridiculous? She's the only person who has ever completely belonged to me, and nothing is going to be too good for her.
Well, Rhett, I'm your wife, aren't I? I belong to you, said Scarlett. Rhett gave her a strange look and said nothing. Melanie admired the baby as much as Rhett did and visited almost every day. Scarlett thought that Melanie looked as if she would break if you touched her. She was so tiny and thin. Aren't Eugenie's eyes blue, Rhett? Melanie said one day while Rhett was holding the baby. I think they're going to be pea green when she's older, almost like mine, said Scarlett. Oh, no, I think they're going to be blue as the bonny blue flag, said Melanie, kissing the baby.
That's it. We'll call her Bonnie. Eugenie is such a formal name, don't you think?
Said Rhett. Bonnie Blue Butler, said Melanie, and everyone laughed. Little Bonnie seemed to agree with her name because she smiled at her father. Rhett took Bonnie everywhere with him. Although the ladies of Atlanta still did not think Rhett was a good, respectable man, they had to admit it was very charming to see a man so interested in his daughter. Men weren't often seen with babies, and every woman knew that men really liked sons the best. But Rhett said that he preferred girls.
Except for Wade Hamilton, he's my favorite boy,
Rhett would say, patting Wade on the shoulder. Rhett wanted to make sure that Wade knew he was still loved, although he had 2 younger sisters that needed a lot of attention. Mammy decided that Mr. Rhett was a fine, respectable gentleman after all, when she saw how good he was with the children, especially Bonnie. Besides, Rhett was always saying that Mammy was the real leader of the house, and constantly asked her opinion on childcare. Mammy certainly liked that. As time passed, Rhett became very concerned with his daughter's social opportunities.
Even if her father isn't accepted in Atlanta, Bonnie is going to have every opportunity in the world. There's not going to be anywhere she can't go. If this means I have to charm all those old lady friends of Aunt Pitty-Pat's, I'll do it. If I have to make friends with the Northerners, I'll do that too. And Scarlett, you're not going to go to that factory of yours anymore. I admire your determination, but leave the work to Archie and Ashley. I won't have Bonnie's mother running around town for a factory. Bonnie isn't going to suffer for her parents' mistakes.
Rhett, I have never seen a man act this way about a baby, Scarlett said. But she agreed to spend less time at the factory. She did not really enjoy the work, although she did miss seeing Ashley. Many months went by, and Bonnie was quickly growing into a beautiful little girl. She walked and talked very well. She was cheerful, and Rhett could not stop talking about how smart she was. Scarlett felt almost jealous of her daughter, for Rhett spent so much time with her. And, although Bonnie loved her mother, Rhett was clearly her favorite. She would not allow anyone else to put her to bed at night. Scarlett was concerned that Rhett would ruin Bonnie's good character, for he gave her anything she wanted. But Rhett did not pay any attention to Scarlett's scolding. The next few years passed quickly and quietly. Scarlett and Rhett raised the children, and Scarlett continued to work at the factory. Bonnie and Rhett went everywhere together, and Scarlett was surprised to see that Rhett was really trying to make himself popular with the people of Atlanta for Bonnie's future. And it was working. Rhett told all Aunt Pitty Pat's friends that he was truly sorry for all the things he had said and done over the years. This wasn't true, of course, but Rhett was such a good actor that the ladies of Atlanta believed him. Soon, Rhett and Scarlett's house was filled with visitors. One day, when Bonnie was 4 years old, Scarlett went to the factory in an especially good mood. It was Ashley's birthday, and Melanie was giving him a surprise birthday party. Scarlett was wearing a new hat, and the day was beautiful. She was smiling as she walked up the steps to the factory office. Inside, Ashley was sitting at the desk working on some accounts. Scarlett stood at the door and noticed that Ashley's blonde hair was turning gray. "And he's only 27 years old," thought Scarlett. She had not spoken to Ashley alone in so long. Was he happy? Suddenly, Ashley turned around and saw Scarlett watching him.
"Hello, Scarlett,"
he said, smiling at her.
"Are you here to see the latest mistakes I've been making?"
"Oh, Ashley, I think when I have a new hat on, all the numbers I ever knew fly right out of my head," Scarlett said, and laughed. Ashley laughed with her.
"Are you here to distract me for a while so that Melanie has time to prepare for my birthday party?"
"Ashley, how did you know about the party? It was supposed to be a surprise," Scarlett cried. Ashley smiled.
"Well, Melanie isn't very good at hiding her excitement about things like this, so I guess the truth."
They sat down by the window and did not say anything for a while. Scarlett thought to herself how comfortable she felt, sitting there with this man who had known her for years. After a while, Ashley said,
"I swear, Scarlett, you get prettier every day. You still look like that young girl at 12 Oaks the day of the barbecue when you were 16. And I'm getting old and gray-haired."
"Oh, Ashley, you're not old. You still have lots and lots of years left. And people in your family are gray-haired early, aren't they?"
"Yes, they are. Of course, there are so few of my family left here now,"
said Ashley softly. Scarlett knew what he was thinking. He was thinking of the days of his youth and of the old South before the war. She suddenly felt incredibly sad. Their lives were so different now. "Oh, Ashley, don't look back. Don't look back into the past before the war. It's hard, isn't it? If you remember the past too much, soon you can't do anything else."
"Why, Scarlett, that's the most beautiful thing I have ever heard you say, and the truest thing. You are right,"
said Ashley. He put his arm around her, and Scarlett leaned her head against his shoulder. They stood there like that for a few moments. Scarlett was surprised to realize that she did not feel as if she and Ashley were being romantic. She only felt as if they were warm friends who understood one another. Suddenly, she saw Ashley's face change, and he moved away from her. She looked at the office door and saw India Wilkes, Ashley's sister, and Rhett staring at them. India looked as if she was thinking, "There, I've caught the two of you." Rhett had a look on his face that Scarlett could not understand. He turned and walked away. Mammy came up the stairs and knocked on the door to Rhett and Scarlett's room. "Miss Scarlett, I brought your dress for the party tonight." "Mammy, tell Rhett that I'm not going. I have a headache," said Scarlett from inside the room. She was lying in her bed, feeling deeply afraid. What would India say to everyone, and especially to Melanie? What would Melanie think? Somehow, Scarlett could not stand the thought of Melanie thinking badly of her. She still thought Melanie was ridiculous and silly, but as she lay there in the bed, Scarlett thought that she would rather cut off her own arm than have Melanie be hurt. Suddenly, there was a quick knock on the door, and Rhett came into the room.
"Get up out of that bed, Mrs. Butler,"
he said.
"You're going to that party, and you're going to face all the people there. It's only what you deserve, Scarlett."
"Rhett, I have a headache.
"Nonsense. You're a coward, Scarlett. You and Ashley are both cowards. You're going over to the Wilkes house if I have to drag you. You can't deny Melanie the pleasure of ordering you out of her house. You've wanted Ashley for years, Scarlett, and you have to face the consequences of your actions."
Scarlett was furious. For once, Rhett really didn't understand. "Rhett, it wasn't like that at all. If you would only give me a chance, I could explain everything."
"My dear, I understand perfectly. Now, here's your dress. I will come and get you in 10 minutes,
said Rhett, and left the room. When Rhett and Scarlett arrived at the Wilkes house, Rhett opened the door of the carriage and said quietly,
"Good night, Scarlett."
"You mean you're not coming in with me?" said Scarlett. She was afraid. Oh, what would everyone say when they saw her? She knew India. India hated her. She would have told everyone.
"No, Scarlett. You are going to have to face them alone,"
said Rhett, but he no longer sounded angry. Scarlett walked up the steps of the house and knocked at the door. She was shaking. Oh, to see the angry look on Melanie's face. The door opened and Scarlett stepped into the room. When the people at the party saw Scarlett, they immediately stopped talking. Scarlett turned red, so they knew. Suddenly, Melanie stepped forward. "Scarlett, darling, I'm so happy you could come," she said in a loud voice. "Would you be a dear and help me greet my guests? India wasn't able to come tonight, and I would love your company," she said gently. Scarlett was stunned. Had India not told Melanie what had happened? Why was Melanie being so kind to her? As Melanie took Scarlett's arm, there was a very firm expression on her face as she took Scarlett's arm. As they began to greet the guests, Melanie looked as if she was daring anyone to be rude to Scarlett. Slowly, the guests realized that Melanie had no intention of making Scarlett leave. They greeted Scarlett with "Good evening" in cold voices and tried to enjoy the party. When Scarlett returned to her own house, she entered quietly, hoping Rhett wouldn't hear her. She was exhausted, and she wanted time to think about what had happened alone. But as she passed the dining room, she heard Rhett call out to her.
"Good evening, Mrs. Butler. Come in here for a moment."
Scarlett entered the dining room. Rhett was sitting there with a glass in front of him and an almost empty bottle of liquor on the table. Although he sat up straight, Scarlett knew that he was very, very drunk. "What is it? You're drunk. I can see that. I'm tired, and I want to go to bed," said Scarlett.
"You're right, my dear. I am very drunk. And I can see that you need a drink too. Yes, don't look at me as if I were crazy. I'm not a fool. I know you drink, and I know how much you drink. So here is a glass. I am sure you need some liquor after the evening you've just had."
"Don't be ridiculous. I'm not drinking that. I'm not going to talk to you when you're acting like this. Tonight was awful," Scarlett said angrily.
"I know that it was,"
said Rhett. He got up and closed the door to the dining room.
"So, what happened, Scarlett? I can see from your face that you're wondering many things. I think I can answer some of the questions in your head. You're wondering why Melanie didn't order you out of her house. Don't think it's because India didn't tell her everything she suspects about you and Ashley. Melanie knows, but she didn't believe anything India told her. She accused India of lying to her and being jealous of you. And India is jealous of you. I know that much. Melanie isn't able to believe that anyone she loves could be dishonorable. And she loves you. I don't know why, since you've wanted to take her husband away from her for years."
"You're drunk and awful. I'm not going to say this again. It wasn't like that. If you would just let me explain," said Scarlett. Rhett suddenly grabbed her.
"My dear, I could crush you like a little bird in my hands, and I would, if I thought that it would make all the thoughts of Ashley Wilkes leave your head."
Scarlett's green eyes sparkled with anger. "Rhett Butler, you take your hands off me," she hissed like a snake. Rhett let go of her.
"You have always had an admirable spirit, my dear,"
he said more calmly.
"Anyway, I have come to tell you that I am leaving tomorrow. I'm taking Bonnie with me on a long trip, and I don't know when we'll be back."
"Are you crazy, Rhett Butler? I'm not letting you take my child on a trip alone. You'll probably let her spend time with people like that Belle Watling you were friends with. You don't know the first thing about nice, proper people," she said. Scarlett saw that she had made a mistake in saying this. She had never seen Rhett give her such an angry look.
"You stupid fool,"
he said coldly.
"I'm a much better parent to Bonnie than you are. Who are you to tell me about nice, proper people after what you did today? And how dare you suggest that I would ever let Bonnie spend time with anyone like Belle Watling? Do you think I want her chances to be ruined?"
he said. He turned and left the room. Scarlett did not see the sadness and pain in his eyes. And even if she had, she would not have understood. Chapter 19. When Scarlett woke up the next morning, Rhett and Bonnie were gone. The next 3 months were terribly boring, without Bonnie's happy laughter and Rhett's conversation. When Scarlett saw Rhett's carriage arriving at the house, she felt happy and excited. But then she remembered the terrible argument they had had before Rhett had left. Surely Rhett wasn't interested in her any more. Well, she wasn't going to make a fool of herself in front of him. "Mother!" cried Bonnie, running to Scarlett. "Daddy brought me a kitten, and I rode a lot of trains. I missed you, Mother. I missed you too, Bonnie, and you sure are pretty, darling. What a big girl, said Scarlett. Then she turned to see Rhett standing in the doorway.
Hello, Mrs. Butler,
he said, smiling calmly at her. Scarlett felt almost embarrassed. Hello, Rhett. Are you staying here or leaving again?
I am leaving again. I came to drop Bonnie off. She missed her mother,
Rhett said. For some reason, Scarlett felt extremely disappointed. Well, all right then. I'll see you when you get back, she said, trying to act as if she didn't care. Rhett looked closely at her for a long time. He was trying to discover what his wife was really thinking.
Well, but perhaps I will stay after all. Bonnie probably needs me here. Both her parents should take care of her, don't you think?
Well, do what you like. I don't care, said Scarlett. But inside she was relieved. She didn't want Rhett to leave again, even though they had fought. So Rhett stayed, and the months passed. Neither Scarlett nor Rhett forgot what had happened between them. They could speak to one another pleasantly, but Rhett was gone from the house much of the time. Scarlett noticed that he was drinking more as well. Rhett and Scarlett did not argue because they did not want to upset Bonnie. Scarlett and Rhett did not sleep in the same room any more, and Scarlett was not as happy. Truthfully, Scarlett missed the talks she and Rhett used to have, but she was afraid to tell Rhett so. She was sure he would just be nasty and make fun of her. Bonnie was now 4.5 years old, and she was learning to ride a pony. She loved her pony and always wanted to ride it everywhere. Rhett had been teaching her how to ride, and the people of Atlanta were always interested to see Rhett on his giant horse walking slowly besides the little girl on the pony. Soon, Rhett began to teach Bonnie how to jump her pony over little boards. He was very careful to only give the pony very small jumps, only a few inches high. But Bonnie always wanted to make the pony jump higher. I can do it, Daddy, she would say.
No, Bonnie, not until you're older, darling,
Rhett would say. Although Rhett almost always gave Bonnie everything she wanted, he was very firm about her jumping the pony safely. But Bonnie, like her mother, was very stubborn. One afternoon, Scarlett was sitting outside in the yard sewing some clothing. Bonnie was walking her pony around in its yard, which had a fence around it. She was thinking how pretty her daughter was and how smart. Bonnie was much smarter than her older sister, Ella. She's certainly going to be trouble when she's older. Rhett lets her have anything she wants, Scarlett thought. She wondered what Bonnie would be like at 16 years old. She would probably be the most beautiful girl in Atlanta, and she would be able to get any boy she wanted. Or at least, Bonnie would think so. Why, she'll be just like me when I was that age, thought Scarlett suddenly, smiling to herself. Scarlett remembered her flirtations with boys, her determination to have Ashley, and her anger when he rejected her the day at 12 Oaks. I was so young then, she thought. What will Bonnie do if things don't turn out as she wants them to? Her thoughts were interrupted by Rhett, who had come out into the yard.
Hello, my dear. Isn't it a lovely day?
Yes, it is. What are you doing home? I thought you were going out this afternoon, said Scarlett.
Scarlett, I wanted to talk to you,
Rhett said.
I don't want us to be so formal with one another. We did get along so well once. I want to give our marriage a chance, a real chance. Let's go away somewhere for a while. Sell all your interest in the factory to Ashley and let's go away. We could take Bonnie and go to Europe, for example."
Scarlett felt strange inside. What was Rhett trying to say? "Rhett, don't be silly. That sounds nice, but I could never leave the house and the other children here," said Scarlett. "Besides, why do you want to work on our marriage now? Don't you think you should have said something years ago?" She felt a little angry and also confused.
"Well, it's not too late, is it? The fact is that you are the mother of my child, and I want Bonnie to have a happy home,"
said Rhett. However, Scarlett had the feeling that he meant more than he was saying. But what? "Well, I don't know," said Scarlett. "I'll have to think about it, I suppose." "Mother, watch me jump!" cried Bonnie, sitting on top of her pony. "Watch me, Daddy!"
"Bonnie, don't make the pony jump too high. It's not safe yet. Remember what I told you,"
said Rhett loudly, standing up. "I can do it, Daddy! I told you!" cried Bonnie.
"Oh, all right, Bonnie. But don't cry if you fall off and get hurt then,"
said Rhett, smiling. "Rhett, don't let her do it," said Scarlett anxiously.
"Oh, she'll be all right. She is a good little rider,"
said Rhett proudly. Bonnie walked the pony a few steps. Suddenly, she kicked at the pony's sides with her heels and made the pony run. Suddenly, both Scarlett and Rhett saw what their daughter was about to do. Bonnie was going to jump the pony over the high fence.
"Bonnie, no!"
shouted Rhett. He began to run towards his daughter, but it was too late. The little pony tried to jump the fence, but its legs hit the top. Scarlett screamed as Bonnie flew through the air and hit the ground without moving.
"Bonnie, Bonnie, Bonnie! Get up, darling!" "No, no, no!"